All right, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. Look, as we are getting deeper into the mini camp OTA phase of the offseason, it's time to look at what these new additions are doing and what they could be doing for this Green Bay team in the short, medium, and long term. And look, this time of year, it's easy to fall in love if you look at social media accounts and things like that about certain players making certain plays. But we always like to look on this channel, what are the stars of a team? What are the coaches on a team saying or doing? That leads you to a key direction with these rookies. And there's one Packer star, the most important Packer star, that is high praise for a rookie. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. We'll get into that report in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, it's clear the Green Bay Packers need to address Jordan Love's support structure, namely adding playmakers into the fold. They did it, of course, in a big way in the NFL draft, namely with the addition of Matthew Golden. Obviously, the issues with Christian Watson, his injury are, it's going to be a long-term thing. It doesn't look like that's ever going to be resolved. So Golden's going to have to come in and give Jordan Love that extra infrastructure he needs in order to have, frankly, an easier time executing this offense. The good news is, if you listen to the commentary out of Green Bay, there's definitely a lot of high praise for Matthew Golden already. Let's pull up this report, courtesy of 24/7 Sports. We'll get into some very interesting data on the other side. Combined Watson's, talking about Christian Watson's lack of availability with the unit that ranked near the top of the league in drops last season, with Dontavian Wicks and Jayden Reed paving the way, and the Packers will be in dire need of Matthew Golden to step up to the plate and deliver. The belief that he could be is one of the reasons why they utilized the number 23 overall pick on him last month. Yeah, I mean, he's a great dude. I'm excited to see his potential on the football field, said Jordan Love. But just the start we've had, he looks like a stud. He looks like a very polished receiver. I'm excited to see just how far he can take it. That last sentence is what really matters, right? Notice he doesn't say he looks like a great athlete. He doesn't say, yeah, he looks fast. He looks very polished. He looks like very refined, right? He's a guy who can come in and contribute and help out Jordan Love in the Green Bay Packers offense right away, because that's exactly what the Packers need. Well, they have had a very solid receiving core over the past few seasons. It's a very clear when you look at the advanced data that the Green Bay Packers receiving core isn't helping out Jordan Love the way they need to. And let's go into our first graphic here to kind of explain what I'm talking about. So I came up with a metric I call it receiving efficiency score. This is essentially receivers providing incremental value to their quarterback. So I took at yards per passing attempt divided by average depth of target, right? So the deeper you throw the football and the more consistently you throw it on average in terms of depth, your yards per attempt as a quarterback should go up. Right now, if the delta between that, how much your yards per attempt goes up, and that your average depth of a target is big, that means that your receivers aren't helping you out very much, right? So you would like to see every time I throw the ball 20 yards downfield, for example, I get a 20-yard completion. It doesn't work out that way. The defense has to say, but in a perfect world, that's what you want to see. And you can see on this data in front of you, we're looking at franchise quarterbacks. You can see that if you look at the receiving efficiency score, Lamar Jackson's going from left to right about 95%. That's pretty good. Josh Allen, a little less than 90%. That's not so good for him. Joe Burrow, about 98%. Mahomes, about 98%. Matthew Stafford, about 87%, right? So you can see what we're looking at here in terms of what receiving cores are really helping out their quarterbacks. And you can see on the far right there, Jordan Love, significantly less than the rest of the pack, right? What this is showing here is that if you look at the rest of these guys, the receiving core, specifically Joe Burrow, which makes sense, of course, he's got Higgins, he's got Jamar Chase, we got Patrick Mahomes, a very friendly offense, kind of a good cadre of receivers there. Jackson, Zay Flowers emerging, great tight ends, of course, across the board. But you can see that Jordan Love doesn't have a high receiving efficiency score. His receivers are not helping him out. Jordan Love throws deep, throws down the field. A lot of times his receivers aren't making the play, or they aren't getting yards after catch, whatever it may be, right? We talk about the drops in the report. Matthew Golden, being a polished receiver, can certainly help with that and just boost his efficiency. Let's go into our next chart here just to compare not just the franchise quarterbacks that I highlighted, but how about some NFC contender quarterbacks? You can see Brock Purdy on the left. He's about 95%. That's pretty high. Jared Goff's about 110%. That is absolutely bonkers. It means he throws the ball at the line of scrimmage and the receivers get more than that out of it. That's yards after catch. That's offensive strategy. Jared Goff gets more help than anybody. Jalen Hurts close to 100%. Baker Mayfield, same thing. He gets a lot of help. Jane Daniels gets a lot of help, about 95%. And there you see Jordan Love. Again, significantly less than everybody else last year. This is what Jordan Love has had to deal with. It's playing the game on hard mode. We know it's a good scheme. He's got a good running back, right? LaFleur's a good offensive coach. They've got not a perfect offensive line, but it's not a diabolically bad offensive line. it is clear, undeniably so, that while the receiving core is solid, they are not helping out Jordan Love the way they need to down the field. And this data supports that, right? Compared to the other franchise quarterbacks that I identified, compared to the other NFC contending quarterbacks, Jordan Love is not getting the efficiency down the field as from his receivers as his competition, and that is hindering him. That's hindering this offense. Matthew Golden, obviously a big play potential guy. The fact that he's already looking polished is a great sign for the Green Bay Packers going forward. They need a guy to slide in day one and just close this gap. Because if you have this kind of gap where your quarterback has to, he throws the ball deep and he doesn't get the same amount of consistent production out of those intermediate and deep throws, you're not going to win, guys. It doesn't matter, right? This is one of those hidden secrets of the National Football League. When the opportunities are there for big plays, you've got to capitalize on them. If you don't, you won't win in these big games. You just won't, no matter how good everything else is. Jordan Love is not getting the help he needs in terms of creating those big plays from his receivers, or at least didn't last year. The addition of Matthew Golden should help with that. The fact that he's already looking good means I think he's off to a great start to help the Packers solve, my opinion, their biggest problem on offense. All right, Miles, I know we threw a lot of data at you, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Packers fans, in the comment section below, want your thoughts on everything we've shown in front of you here, talking about the addition of Matthew Golden and what he could bring in terms of helping Jordan Love close this gap in terms of receiving efficiency, certainly down the field. But if there's another Green Bay Packers rookie that you're expecting big things out of, please let us know as well. Maybe there's a guy that's sliding under the radar that you're like, hey, pay attention to this kid. He's really good. Give us your most impactful Green Bay Packers rookie, whether it's Golden, whether it's somebody else. Put them in the comment section below. But Mize, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest news and this data out of Green Bay?
Yeah, Nick, I think it's really interesting. I think that the help, the polish, the everything that Golden brings, because that's not the only thing he brings. This guy is incredibly fast. I think he's going to be, an athletic freak, just big weapon at receiver for them. The fact he's coming in here and bringing what he does to this team, it just goes to show, how good this team is. Because if you look at what is going on as far as the Packers and their receiving grades and where they get, tangled up, I think drops is a big issue last season. And if you look around this team, you look at who didn't drop the ball. The four highest players who did not drop the ball are Josh Jacobs, the running back, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, both tight ends, and then Malik Heath, a receiver who caught 10 passes last year. So that's not even worth talking about his drop grade because he wasn't even a contributor or much of a factor on this team last season. Let's look at everybody else. No one else on this team. You look at Jaden Reed, he had a 33 drop grade. That is awful. You look at Romeo Doubs, the 56 drop grade last year. Not good at all. You look at Dontavian Wicks, 29 grade for drops last year. Everyone else is like in the low to mid 60s. Not a lot going on. The team as a whole had 30 drops. So enter Matthew Golden, a guy who last year for Texas did a lot of good stuff. 74.5 drop grade, which is, I'd say, average or above average for the NFL as far as what you're able to do there. That's a very solid grade. I think he only had like 4 drops all last season. So good grades. I think he's bringing in a lot to this team. And I think I showed when you see these charts, you see these graphs, you see all the data, and you see what's going on. Who doesn't drop the ball for the Packers? Well, it's not the wide receivers. They do drop the ball, and I think that's a really big issue here. I think Wicks had 10 drops, and you look at Watson, there's 9 drops there. It is just a team that is not doing a whole lot to help out their quarterback. And when we look at the best quarterbacks in the NFL, we look at what these teams are doing to help their quarterbacks out. You look at Joe Burrow, you look at Jared Goff, you look at all of these kind of guys who are making deep pushes in the playoffs, doing really good stuff. They need help from their receivers. I think that's the key here. Bringing in a guy like Matthew Golden, that Jordan Love is finally like, okay, I have a reliable target that can come to me and really be a benefit, can be a, help me, and I'm not pulling all the weight. I'm not the one doing all of the, dirty work with me throwing the ball. I'm getting help from my receivers, getting yards after the catch, getting all these things that help me out. I think it's going to be a really great thing for this Green Bay offense because right now, Jordan Love's doing all the work. He's doing all the heavy lifting. He's giving, average depth of target. He's not getting yards after catch. He's not getting guys that necessarily catch the ball all the time. 30 drops in a season to me seems like a lot. If there's a receiver that had 10 drops in a season, I don't even understand how you keep them on the roster at that point. That's just so many drops. That's like one of the worst in the NFL in that category. Having a drop grade in the 30s or 29, it is very bad for a starting receiver. Can those things turn around? Yes, I think they can. But I think the better thing to do is find a guy who's good in that category that you can bring in and start to help this team out. And I think when we look at Matthew Golden and what he does, he's reliable. He can catch the ball well. He did it at a high level in college. But also on top of that, that's not even the most, drawing thing about him. That's not the biggest attribute for him. So for him to bring those things to the table and they be so good compared to what Jordan Love had last year, but on top of that, the physical attributes, his speed, his ability to break the game open in that aspect, I think this is going to be a special player for the Green Bay Packers this year.
And the drops are certainly important, but it's not just the drops. It's the lack of creating additional big plays when on the plays where the drops don't happen, right? Because if you drop one play if you drop an intermediate post on 2nd and 10, but on 3rd and 10, you win a 50-50 jump ball 40 yards down the field, it kind of works itself out. And that's what we've seen from a lot of the other guys on this list, right? The receiving core is either incredibly talented and they make those big plays, those yards after catch plays, those 50-50 balls, or they have great hands, right? They're steady, reliable, right? Like you look at the Chiefs are a great example of this in terms of a lot of their players and their receiving core. The Green Bay Packers last season were the worst of both worlds. They didn't generate a lot of 50-50 ball wins, didn't get an incredible amount of game-breaking yards after catch. They were pretty good after the catch in terms of statistically, but it wasn't like yards after catch versus expected. So they may get 40 yards after catch, but that's because he was schemed wide open, right? It's one thing to have no one around from you and get 30 yards after you catch the football. It's another thing to make 5 people miss and get 30 yards. The Green Bay Packers did very little of the latter there. They were not great at making people miss after the reception. They were not great at winning 50-50 balls, and that's why you see that delta there. So you had the drops, which are bad, but if you make the big plays with the drops, it kind of evens itself out. That did not happen for Green Bay last season, and I think it's one of the big reasons why they ended up getting knocked out of the playoffs, and it was kind of a disappointing year for the Pack, to be totally honest. And look, Jordan Love, we know is a franchise guy. We know he can have postseason success. Obviously, we know this offensive line is trending in a good direction. Running game's good. Defense is getting better, certainly where it was in 2023. It's continuing to improve. Love a lot of the additions they've done there. I think they're trending in the right direction. I think the reality is this receiving core needs to help out Jordan Love. If you want to be a championship team, you look at some of those quarterbacks we brought up on the charts there. Their receivers help out their quarterbacks, whether it's the Chiefs receivers very rarely dropping the football, whether it's the Eagles receivers and the Bengals receivers making big plays, things like that. Whether it's, when Matthew Stafford and the Rams, when they went on that title run a few years ago, it was Cooper Kupp making big plays and never dropping the football, right? This is what you need to do if you're going to be successful in the National Football League as an offense. You need to have receivers that help your quarterback out. There's a lot of ways to do it. Not dropping the ball is one, making big plays is another. The Packers did neither of those things last season. I think Golden can come in and help with both those elements, and the fact that he's off to a good start makes me think he has a great chance to have a big impact in that regard day one.